The greatest revolutions in history were silent at first. When we think about revolutions, we imagine explosions of change, crowds in the streets, flags burning, governments collapsing overnight. But if we look carefully at history, the most transformative shifts began quietly, almost invisibly, long before anyone realized what was happening. The agricultural revolution did not announce itself with a manifesto. A few scattered communities began domesticating wheat and goats. At first it seemed like a minor experiment. Yet within a few thousand years, it reshaped human society, religion, politics, and even biology. The Industrial Revolution also started modestly, with improvements in steam engines and textile machines. Few farmers in rural villages understood that their entire way of life would soon become obsolete. By the time the consequences were visible, the structure of society had already been rewritten. Today we are living through a revolution even more profound, and once again it is unfolding in silence. There are no barricades in the streets. There are no declarations of war. Instead, there are software updates. There are new platforms. There are algorithms quietly optimizing processes in the background of daily life. The transformation is subtle because it does not immediately threaten our physical survival. It reshapes our cognitive and economic environment instead. And human beings are often slow to detect changes in systems that operate gradually. Silence is the most powerful strategy of modern transformation. When change arrives violently, it triggers resistance. When it arrives conveniently, it is welcomed. The printing press once destabilized religious authority because it democratized knowledge. But today, the distribution of information is so seamless that we rarely question the infrastructure behind it. We assume it is neutral. We assume it is merely a tool. Yet every tool reshapes the hand that uses it. Every communication system reshapes thought itself. The current revolution is not merely technological. It is epistemological. It changes how we know what we know. In previous centuries, information was scarce and authority was centralized. People relied on priests, monarchs, or scholars to interpret reality. In the modern era, information became abundant and individuals gained unprecedented autonomy. But now we are entering a phase where information is not only abundant, it is curated, filtered, and personalized by invisible systems. These systems determine which news you see, which products appear before you, which ideas gain traction. The revolution lies not in access to information, but in control over attention. The shift is quiet because it operates beneath consciousness. Most people believe they are acting freely. They wake up, check their devices, scroll through updates, respond to notifications, make purchases, form opinions. At no point does it feel like participation in a historic transformation. Yet beneath these ordinary actions lies a massive restructuring of power. Those who design and control digital infrastructures shape behavior on a scale unimaginable to past emperors. In ancient Rome, power required legions. In the 20th century, it required propaganda machines and broadcasting networks. In the 21st century, it requires data centers and predictive algorithms. The most significant political and economic decisions increasingly depend on systems that process information faster than any human mind can comprehend. Financial markets react to algorithmic trades executed in microseconds. Social movements rise and fall according to patterns, amplified by recommendation engines. Even personal relationships are influenced by digital matching systems that predict compatibility. The revolution is silent because it is embedded in convenience. You receive directions instantly. You communicate globally in seconds. You access libraries of knowledge in your pocket. These conveniences feel empowering, and they are. But empowerment and dependence often grow together. When navigation systems guide every journey, spatial memory weakens. When recommendation systems choose entertainment, curiosity narrows. When predictive text finishes sentences, linguistic creativity subtly shifts. Historically, revolutions changed external structures, land ownership, political authority, industrial production. This revolution penetrates internal processes, cognition, emotion, decision-making. It reshapes not only what we do, but how we think. And because thought itself is evolving alongside technology, we struggle to perceive the magnitude of the shift. There is a paradox at the heart of silent revolutions. They feel incremental while being exponential. Each update seems minor. Each new application seems like a convenience. But collectively, they accumulate into a transformation of civilization. Consider how quickly communication norms have changed. Within 2 decades, billions of people moved from face-to-face interaction and physical letters to continuous digital connectivity. This is not a small adaptation. It is a reconfiguration of social life. The silence also comes from distraction. Never before have humans had access to so much stimulation. Entertainment, news, advertising, social validation, all compete for attention. In such an environment, deep reflection becomes rare. And without reflection, revolutions go unnoticed. The most profound shifts occur not in dramatic headlines, but in everyday habits. Parallel to this silent revolution is another shift equally transformative. Technology is not merely stealing jobs. It is redesigning humans. During the Industrial Revolution, machines replaced muscle. A mechanical loom could weave faster than a human artisan. A tractor could plow more efficiently than a team of workers. The displacement was visible. Factories rose where farms once stood. Workers migrated to cities. Social unrest erupted because the impact was tangible. Today, automation is targeting cognitive abilities once considered uniquely human. Artificial intelligence systems diagnose medical images with remarkable accuracy. They compose music, generate text, analyze legal documents, detect fraud, optimize logistics. These are not repetitive manual tasks. They are intellectual processes requiring pattern recognition, learning, and adaptation. When muscle was replaced, humans retained cognitive superiority. The brain remained the ultimate economic asset. Now, aspects of cognition itself are being automated. Not all of it, but enough to disrupt labor markets and redefine expertise. If an algorithm can analyze millions of medical records in seconds and identify subtle correlations invisible to human doctors, what becomes of medical training? If software can draft contracts, predict market fluctuations, and personalize education, what happens to professions built around those skills? The transformation is deeper than employment statistics. When machines perform cognitive tasks, they reshape human identity. For centuries, Western societies celebrated the rational individual, the thinker, the decision-maker. Economic systems were built around the assumption that humans are the primary processors of information. But if algorithms outperform humans in analyzing complex datasets, the center of gravity shifts. This does not mean humans become useless. It means humans must redefine usefulness. Creativity, empathy, ethical judgment, and interdisciplinary thinking become more valuable. Yet even these domains are not immune to automation. AI systems generate art and simulate conversation. They detect emotional patterns in speech and facial expression. The boundary between human and machine capabilities grows increasingly blurred. Technology redesigns humans, not only by replacing tasks, but by augmenting abilities. Wearable devices monitor health metrics continuously. Brain-computer interfaces are being developed to enhance memory or restore mobility. Genetic editing tools offer the possibility of altering biological traits. These innovations promise extraordinary benefits, but they also raise profound questions about inequality and autonomy. If cognitive enhancement becomes available to those who can afford it, society may divide into augmented and non-augmented classes. Economic disparities could become biological disparities. The concept of meritocracy would require re-evaluation. When performance is influenced by technological augmentation, what does achievement mean? Moreover, reliance on intelligent systems can diminish certain skills. When memory is outsourced to digital storage, internal recall weakens. When navigation is automated, spatial reasoning declines. When decision-making is guided by predictive analytics, intuition adapts to external prompts. Over time, humans may evolve cognitively in response to technological ecosystems. There is also a psychological dimension. Work has long structured daily life. It provides routine, purpose, and social connection. If automation reduces the need for human labor in many sectors, societies must confront existential questions. How do individuals find meaning outside traditional employment? Universal basic income may address economic stability, but it does not automatically address psychological fulfillment. Education systems are struggling to adapt. For centuries, education focused on transferring information and training specialized skills. In an era where information is instantly accessible and skills become obsolete rapidly, the priority must shift toward adaptability. Learning how to learn becomes more important than mastering static content. Emotional resilience becomes as crucial as technical competence. The redesign of humans also intersects with surveillance. Data collected from daily activities enables precise behavioral modeling. Companies and governments can predict preferences, vulnerabilities, and future action. This predictive capacity influences advertising, political messaging, and policy decisions. When human behavior becomes a dataset, autonomy takes on a new meaning. The silent revolution and the redesign of humans are intertwined. As algorithms gain influence, humans adjust behavior to align with algorithmic expectations. Content creators tailor messages to maximize engagement metrics. Employees optimize productivity according to data-driven performance indicators. Social interactions adapt to platform dynamics. Gradually, human expression conforms to machine-readable patterns. Yet history shows that humans are remarkably adaptive. Each technological shift has produced anxiety and opportunity. The printing press threatened traditional authorities, but empowered literacy and science. Electricity transformed industry and daily life. The internet connected billions. The current revolution is unprecedented in scope, because it operates simultaneously at biological, cognitive, and social levels. Understanding this transformation requires stepping back from immediate conveniences and examining long-term trajectories. Technology is not destiny. It reflects human priorities and values. The direction it takes depends on governance, ethics, and collective awareness. If societies prioritize short-term profit over long-term well-being, automation may exacerbate inequality and erode autonomy. If they prioritize human development and inclusivity, intelligent systems can augment rather than diminish human potential. The silent nature of this revolution does not diminish its magnitude. On the contrary, it increases responsibility. When change is loud, resistance mobilizes. When change is quiet, vigilance must be internal. Recognizing how technology redesigns economic structures and cognitive processes is the first step toward shaping outcomes deliberately rather than passively. Humanity stands at a crossroads not marked by dramatic spectacle, but by subtle shifts in daily behavior. The tools we build are beginning to shape the builders in unprecedented ways. Jobs will evolve or disappear. Skills will transform. Identities will adapt. The question is not whether change will occur. It is whether we remain conscious participants in the process or drift along pathways optimized by systems we barely understand. For most of history, freedom was something physical. It meant the absence of chains, the absence of prison walls, the absence of soldiers at your door. When empires conquered territories, they did so visibly. When dictators rose to power, they censored newspapers, imprisoned opponents, and banned books. Oppression was loud. It was dramatic. It left scars you could point to. But power has evolved. Today, freedom is rarely taken by force. It is surrendered in exchange for convenience. No one storms your house to demand your secrets. Instead, you place a device in your pocket that listens, tracks, and learns. No one forces you to reveal your preferences. You announce them voluntarily, sometimes dozens of times a day, through clicks, searches, likes, poses, and purchases. What once required torture chambers and secret police now requires only persuasive design and an internet connection. The modern individual lives inside an architecture of convenience. Navigation apps tell you where to drive. Streaming platforms tell you what to watch. News feeds tell you what matters. Dating apps tell you who is compatible. Shopping algorithms tell you what you need before you consciously realize you need it. Each of these tools saves time. Each removes friction. Each feels like empowerment. Yet every reduction in friction is also a reduction in deliberate thought. When you no longer struggle to choose a route, a book, a partner, or a political article, you no longer practice the cognitive effort required for independent judgment. Gradually, the skill of choosing weakens. Decision-making becomes outsourced. Autonomy shifts from being a practiced discipline to being a nostalgic concept. This is how freedom erodes not through prohibition, but through optimization. The systems guiding modern life are designed to predict and influence behavior. They are not neutral mirrors reflecting your desires. They are active engines shaping them. When a platform recommends a video, it is not simply responding to your interests. It is testing, learning, adjusting. It is running millions of micro-experiments to see what captures your attention, what triggers emotion, what keeps you engaged for just a few seconds longer. And attention is not trivial. Attention is the gateway to perception. What you repeatedly see becomes your reality. If outrage captures your focus, the world appears hostile. If sensationalism dominates your feed, nuance disappears. Over time, your emotional landscape is sculpted by invisible systems optimized not for truth, not for wisdom, but for engagement. Freedom once meant being protected from censorship. Now it must also mean being protected from manipulation. But manipulation today is subtle. It does not command, it nudges. It does not threaten, it suggests. It does not silence alternatives. It buries them beneath personalized content tailored precisely to your psychological profile. The result is not uniform propaganda. It is fragmented realities. Each person lives in a slightly different informational universe, shaped by data patterns too complex to perceive directly. In such a world, you may feel more informed than ever. You have access to infinite articles, lectures, podcasts, documentaries. But access is not the same as understanding. If algorithms decide which pieces of information reach you first, which are amplified, and which are hidden, then your intellectual environment is curated in ways you did not consciously choose. The danger is not that someone will confiscate your freedom overnight. The danger is that you will willingly hand it over in small increments, because each trade seems rational. Privacy in exchange for personalization. Data in exchange for efficiency. Autonomy in exchange for comfort. And because each exchange appears minor, the cumulative effect remains invisible. Parallel to this quiet erosion of freedom is the transformation of power itself. In the 20th century, oil determined geopolitical strength. Nations fought wars over it. Corporations rose and fell based on access to it. Oil powered engines, factories and militaries. It shaped the global order. In the 21st century, data plays a similar role but with deeper consequences. Oil fuels machines. Data fuels intelligence. Every search query, medical record, financial transaction, GPS coordinate, social interaction, and biometric reading generates data. When aggregated and processed, these fragments reveal patterns about human behavior at a scale unimaginable in previous eras. They reveal how diseases spread, how markets fluctuate, how opinions shift, how emotions respond to stimuli. Those who control vast data sets and possess the computational power to analyze them gain unprecedented insight into societies. They can predict consumer trends, anticipate political movements, and detect vulnerabilities before individuals themselves recognize them. Prediction is power because it allows intervention at the optimal moment. Consider political campaigns. In the past, persuasion required broad messages delivered to mass audiences through television or newspapers. Today, messages can be tailored to individual psychological profiles. One voter sees content emphasizing economic stability. Another sees content emphasizing cultural identity. Each believes they are responding freely to information, unaware that the information itself has been customized to maximize influence. Democracy depends on shared public discourse. It requires citizens to deliberate based on common facts. When data-driven systems fragment the informational landscape into millions of personalized narratives, the foundation of collective decision-making weakens. Citizens no longer argue about the same reality. They inhabit parallel versions of it. Moreover, data does not only reveal what you think, it reveals what you feel, often before you consciously articulate it. Facial recognition systems detect microexpressions. Biometric devices track heart rate variability. Shopping patterns reveal emotional states. When combined, these signals allow systems to infer mood, stress, attraction, and vulnerability, If a corporation or government can detect when you are anxious, lonely, or angry, it can target messages at precisely those moments. Influence becomes not just personalized, but timed. Intervention occurs when resistance is lowest. This creates a profound asymmetry. Individuals know little about the algorithms shaping their environment. Algorithms, however, know increasingly intimate details about individuals. Transparency flows in one direction. Historically, surveillance required enormous resources. It was limited to authoritarian regimes willing to invest heavily in monitoring citizens. Now surveillance is embedded in everyday devices. It is financed not by fear, but by advertising revenue and convenience services. The architecture of daily life doubles as an infrastructure of observation. Data accumulation also concentrates economic power. Companies that gather and analyze vast data sets improve their services, attracting more users, generating more data, and reinforcing their dominance. This feedback loop creates monopolistic dynamics. Smaller competitors struggle because they lack the data required to refine algorithms at scale. As economic power centralizes, so does influence over political processes. Regulations are shaped by those with technical expertise and lobbying capacity. Policymakers often lack the deep understanding necessary to oversee complex algorithmic systems. This imbalance widens the gap between technological capability and democratic accountability. Yet the story is not predetermined. Data itself is not inherently oppressive. It can improve healthcare by identifying disease patterns early. It can optimize energy use, reduce waste, enhance education through personalized learning. The same tools that enable manipulation can enable empowerment. The decisive factor is governance. Who controls data? Under what rules? With what transparency? And for whose benefit? If data becomes concentrated in the hands of a few corporations or governments without oversight, the risk to freedom grows. If data governance includes accountability, ethical standards, and public participation, the benefits can be widely shared. The challenge is that technological change moves faster than institutional adaptation. Legal frameworks evolve slowly. Public understanding lags behind technical innovation. By the time societies debate the implications of a new system, it is often already deeply integrated into daily life. This is why awareness is essential. Not fear, not rejection of technology, but understanding. To live freely in the 20th century requires more than political rights. It requires digital literacy. It requires knowledge of how algorithms prioritize content, how data is collected and monetized, how incentives shape design choices. It requires questioning default settings and recognizing that services are often funded by behavioral data. Freedom must expand to include cognitive sovereignty, the capacity to think without invisible manipulation. And this sovereignty demands effort. It demands slowing down in environments designed for speed. It demands seeking diverse sources of information rather than passively consuming what appears first. It demands protecting time for deep reflection in a culture optimized for distraction. The transferation of power through data is perhaps the most significant shift of our era. It reaches into labor markets, political systems, personal relationships, and inner psychology. Unlike past revolutions, it does not announce itself with explosions. It arrives through software updates and improved user experiences. You will not feel a dramatic loss. You will feel increased efficiency. And that is precisely why vigilance matters. The most dangerous revolutions in history were not the loudest ones. They did not begin with explosions or public declarations. They began quietly, in laboratories, in corporate boardrooms, in lines of code written by engineers who were not trying to overthrow society, but to optimize it. The agricultural revolution changed how humans lived, but most farmers did not wake up one morning and announce they were abandoning hunting. The Industrial Revolution did not arrive with a single dramatic event. It seeped into cities, factories, and habits. Today we are living through another transformation, one that is more profound than the previous two combined. And yet it feels like progress, convenience, entertainment. Technology is no longer merely a tool that extends human muscle. It is becoming a system that penetrates human cognition. In the past, machines replaced physical labor. A tractor replaced dozens of farm workers. A mechanical loom replaced skilled weavers. But now machines are replacing perception, analysis, and even creativity. Algorithms can scan medical images more accurately than radiologists, compose music in the style of classical masters, generate persuasive essays, detect patterns in financial markets beyond the capacity of any trader. The shift is not from manual to mechanical. It is from human judgment to computational prediction. When machines replaced muscles, humans moved into roles that required intelligence. But what happens when machines compete in intelligence itself? The comforting assumption is that new jobs will always appear, just as they did during previous revolutions. Yet the historical analogy may be misleading. Earlier technologies complemented human cognitive abilities. This technology challenges them directly. If an algorithm can learn faster than a human, adapt faster than a human, and scale instantly across millions of tasks, then retraining may not be enough. The pace of change may exceed the pace of human adaptation. This is not simply an economic issue, it is existential. Work has never been just about income. It has been about identity. When people introduce themselves, they often define themselves by profession. Work structures time, social networks, and a sense of purpose. If entire sectors become automated, societies will confront not only unemployment, but a crisis of meaning. A world in which millions feel economically and socially irrelevant is politically unstable. Human dignity is fragile when detached from contribution. Meanwhile, the nature of power is shifting. In previous centuries, power rested on land, armies, factories, oil. Today it rests on data. Data about behavior, preferences, biological signals, movements, conversations. When data is aggregated and processed by powerful algorithms, it becomes predictive. Prediction allows influence. If a system can predict your choices, it can subtly shape them. It does not need to coerce you. It simply arranges the environment in which your decisions unfold. Freedom in the modern era is rarely taken by force. It dissolves through convenience. Navigation apps tell you the fastest route. Recommendation systems tell you what to watch. Feeds curate the news you see. None of this feels oppressive. On the contrary, it feels helpful. Yet each step reduces the space for independent exploration. When algorithms filter information, they determine which possibilities even appear in your awareness. Choice becomes a selection among pre-designed options. The transformation is gradual. There is no single moment when you realize your autonomy has narrowed. Instead, habits form. You check the same platforms, trust the same automated suggestions, rely on the same predictive systems. Over time, your behavioral data becomes more accurate than your self-knowledge. Systems learn your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your impulses. They learn when you are most likely to buy, to click, to believe. And once prediction becomes reliable, manipulation becomes inexpensive. Democracy depends on informed citizens capable of independent judgment. But if the flow of information is curated by opaque algorithms, optimized for engagement rather than truth, public discourse fragments. Individuals inhabit personalized realities. Political messaging becomes micro-targeted, tailored to psychological profiles. In such an environment, the traditional mechanisms of accountability weaken. The ballot remains, but the cognitive conditions that make meaningful choice possible begin to erode. At the same time, biological data is entering the digital sphere. Wearable devices monitor heart rate, sleep patterns, stress levels. Medical records become digitized. Genetic information becomes accessible. When combined with behavioral data, this creates a comprehensive profile of the individual, not just as a consumer or voter, but as a biological organism. If external systems can interpret your emotional state better than you can, the boundary between inner life and external influence blurs. The most unsettling aspect of this transformation is not malicious intent. Many of the engineers and entrepreneurs driving it are motivated by efficiency, innovation, and profit, not tyranny. But systems optimized for profit may still undermine freedom. If the primary metric is engagement, content that provokes outrage or fear will outperform content that encourages reflection. The result is a collective attention span that shrinks while emotional polarization intensifies. Attention is the most valuable commodity of the 20th century. It is finite, yet countless platforms, compete to capture it. When your attention is constantly fragmented, deep thinking becomes rare. Without deep thinking, long-term consequences are ignored. Societies become reactive rather than strategic. In such an environment, structural changes can occur with minimal resistance because citizens are distracted. The challenge is compounded by speed. Technological evolution moves exponentially while human institutions evolve incrementally. Legal systems, educational curricula, and political frameworks struggle to keep pace. By the time regulations address one technological development, several new ones have emerged. This asymmetry creates a power imbalance between agile technological actors and slower democratic processes. Education therefore faces a fundamental dilemma. Teaching fixed skills is insufficient when those skills may be automated within years. What becomes essential is adaptability, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and ethical reasoning. Yet these qualities are harder to measure and standardize. They do not fit neatly into traditional examination. Nonetheless, they may be the only durable assets in an era of intelligent machines. The narrative that technology inevitably leads to progress is historically simplistic. Technologies are tools. Their impact depends on governance and collective choices. The printing press enabled scientific advancement but also religious wars. Nuclear technology can generate energy or destroy cities. Artificial intelligence can optimize healthcare or entrench surveillance. The direction is not predetermined. Individuals often underestimate their agency because the systems appear vast and complex. Yet awareness is itself a form of resistance. Understanding how algorithms operate, questioning sources of information, diversifying digital habits, these are not revolutionary acts in appearance, but they cultivate autonomy. The difference between being influenced and being manipulated often lies in awareness. Economic adaptation will require continuous learning. Static careers will become rare. The ability to reinvent oneself repeatedly may become the defining trait of resilience. But reinvention requires psychological flexibility. It requires detaching identity from a single profession and embracing uncertainty as normal. This is emotionally demanding. Societies must therefore invest not only in technical training, but in mental health and community structures that provide support during transitions. There is also a moral dimension. As machines make decisions affecting employment, healthcare, and justice, ethical frameworks must be embedded within algorithms. Yet ethics cannot be reduced to code alone. It requires human deliberation about values. If decisions become fully automated without transparent oversight, accountability dissipates. Responsibility must remain traceable. The fear that machines will dominate humanity often imagines dramatic scenarios of rebellion. A more realistic scenario is quiet dependence. Systems become so efficient that opting out feels irrational. Gradually, humans defer more decisions to automated processes because they are faster, cheaper, and statistically more accurate. Competence shifts from individual judgment to system maintenance. Humans supervise, but rarely intervene. If this trajectory continues unchecked, societies may reach a point where understanding the infrastructure becomes limited to a technical elite. When complexity exceeds common comprehension, power concentrates. The majority participate as users, not as architects. This asymmetry can undermine equality even in the absence of overt oppression. Yet history also shows human adaptability. Crises have forced re-evaluation of institutions before. Labor laws emerged in response to industrial exploitation. Environmental regulations arose after ecological damage became undeniable. The current transformation may similarly provoke new forms of governance and cooperation. The question is whether awareness will precede irreversible harm or follow it. To remain relevant in this evolving landscape, individuals must cultivate depth in a culture of distraction. They must question systems that promise effortless optimization. They must recognize that convenience carries trade-offs. They must treat their attention as a precious resource, not an expendable one. Autonomy requires effort. It requires pausing before accepting algorithmic suggestions as neutral. The erosion of freedom does not announce itself. It unfolds in micro-adjustments. A recommendation here, a personalized ad there, a predictive suggestion that saves a few seconds. None of these feel significant alone. Together, they construct an invisible architecture shaping perception and behavior. The danger is not sudden collapse, but gradual surrender. Economic shifts may displace millions, but psychological shifts may reshape billions. The sense of being observed, analyzed, and predicted can alter self-perception. When people know they are constantly generating data, they may self-censor. When they believe algorithms determine opportunity, they may conform to expected patterns. Subtle behavioral adjustments accumulate. The future is therefore not a simple story of job loss or technological triumph. It is a complex negotiation between efficiency and dignity, prediction and privacy, automation and awareness. The outcome depends on collective vigilance. Systems are designed by humans. Policies are enacted by humans. Norms are shaped by human discourse. What must be avoided is passivity. Assuming that progress is inevitable or that personal choices are insignificant allows concentrated interests to dominate direction. Engaged citizenship, informed debate, and ethical reflection are not luxuries, they are safeguards. In an era when machines can process information at unprecedented speed, the uniquely human capacity for moral judgment becomes more, not less, essential. You may not notice the precise moment when a profession disappears, when an algorithm subtly guides your opinion, when convenience narrows your choices. The transformation rarely feels dramatic. It feels incremental. But incremental shifts accumulate into structural change. Awareness is the difference between adaptation and irrelevance. In a world increasingly shaped by intelligent systems, the most radical act is sustained, conscious attention to the forces shaping your life. Because without that attention, transformation will continue quietly, efficiently, and without resistance. We are not standing at the edge of a distant future. We are already inside the transformation. The systems shaping our economy, our politics, and even our inner thoughts are not waiting for permission. They are evolving every day. The real question is not whether change will happen. It is whether we will remain conscious participants in that change or passive subjects of it. Losing a job is painful. Losing freedom is dangerous. But losing awareness is fatal. Because once awareness disappears, resistance disappears with it. The future will not be defined only by artificial intelligence or automation. It will be defined by the depth of human intelligence we choose to cultivate. If we strengthen our critical thinking, protect our attention, question the systems we depend on, and continuously adapt, then technology becomes a tool for empowerment rather than control. History has never guaranteed survival to the strongest. It has favored the most adaptable and the most aware. This moment demands both. Stay informed. Stay curious. Stay mentally independent. The world may change faster than ever before, but conscious human beings still have the power to shape its direction. Thank you to all my viewers and my audience for giving your time, your attention, and your mind to this conversation. Your awareness is not small. It matters. If this message made you think, question, or reflect even for a moment, then it has already served its purpose. Stay focused. Stay aware.
Hello, everybody. And what I want to talk to you today about is the power to shape the world and the power to shape our future. About your power as leaders and as innovators, but also about the power of the human species as a whole. And the big question we are facing is whether AI is taking away humanity's power to control our future, or perhaps AI is giving humanity more power than ever before. And also, can we even speak about humanity, about a single humanity anymore? Or perhaps humanity in the era of AI is splitting into different groups, each with a radically different future. But before we get to AI, we have to say a few words about politics. The relatively stable liberal order of the early 21st century is collapsing. Instead of a cooperative order based on universal values, global institutions, and international laws, we are entering into a super competitive, chaotic world in which only one thing matters, and this one thing is brute force. Leaders like President Trump envision the world as a collection of fortresses, with each country separated from the others by high walls. Financial walls like tariffs, military walls, cultural walls, and physical walls. This vision may have certain advantages, but it fails to address one key problem. Walled fortresses are seldom friendly. Thousands of years of history teach us that each national fortress would probably want a bit more security, prosperity, and territory for itself at the expense of the neighbors. And in the absence of universal values, global institutions, and international laws, how would rival fortresses resolve their disputes? For millennia, the vision of the world as a collection of fortresses always led to exactly the same outcome: a never-ending cycle of wars, with powerful empires conquering their weaker neighbors and eventually fighting each other for supremacy. This is already beginning to happen all around us. Wars of conquest, which were taboo since 1945, are coming back. Russia already sustained 1 million casualties in its attempt to conquer Ukraine and re-establish the Russian Empire. The Trump administration has already expressed imperial ambitions regarding Greenland, Panama, and even Canada, and seems to support Israel's conquest of Gaza. China, too, has its eyes on overseas expansion. The collapse of the old order is frightening, but it is also, of course, an opportunity to shape a better order. And the big question is, who will be the shapers? In the old liberal order, the ideal was that all humans would be shapers. It didn't matter whether you came from the USA or Brazil, whether you're white or black, a man or a woman, straight or gay, you had equal human dignity, and therefore, in theory at least, your views and interests counted for something. Sure, this liberal ideal was never fully realized. Ideals are not reality. But the liberal world was nevertheless a huge improvement over previous historical models. In the new post-liberal chaotic world, the ideal of equal human dignity is completely and openly abandoned. Instead of all humans trying to cooperate to shape a world that will be good for all humans, the current mantras are me first and might is right. A few powerful people in a handful of countries think that they have the right to shape the world for everyone. If you remember the meeting earlier this year between President Trump and President Zelensky at the White House, whenever Zelensky talked about things like justice or peace or territorial sovereignty of nations, President Trump interrupted him and said, "You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards." As we are meeting here in Sao Paulo to talk about the future of humanity, there are two questions for each of you to ponder. First, do you have any cards? Are there any cards in Sao Paulo? Or are all the cards in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow in the hands of people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin. The second question is perhaps even more important. Do you want to live in a world where the only thing that matters is cards? Is life ultimately just a card game with winners and losers? Now, I could have given the exact same speech that I gave now in 1939 or in 1914 or in countless other historical moments when humanity was on the brink of a major crisis. But this time, it's really different. Because as we ask ourselves, who will shape the new world of the 21st century, we need to take into account not only human shapers. For the first time in history, there are also non-human shapers on the planet, AIs. We might be quite close, maybe a few years, quite close to the moment when an algorithm would tell all humans, including Trump and Putin, you don't have the cards. As we enter the era of AI, I want to briefly explore here three questions. What is AI? What is the threat of AI? And how can all of you, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators, help humanity not just survive, but also flourish in the era of AI? So let's start. What is AI? There is so much hype around this term, AI, that the term is now inaccurately applied to almost every machine, and it is becoming difficult to know what it really means. So let me be very, very clear. AI does not mean automation. AI means agency. AI is not a tool in our hands. AI is an independent agent capable of acting and learning and changing on its own. To be an AI, it is not enough for a machine to act independently, automatically. It must also have the capacity to learn and change by itself, to make decisions by itself, and to invent new ideas by itself. As a simple example, consider a coffee machine. If you press a button and the machine automatically makes you an espresso according to a pre-programmed procedure, this is not AI. The machine doesn't learn or create anything new by itself. But suppose that as you approach the machine, even before you press any button, the machine says to you, I've been monitoring you for the last few weeks. Based on everything I've learned about you, and based on your facial expression right now, I predict that you would like to have a double espresso with 1 spoon of sugar. So I've already made you such a cup. Here, take it. That's an AI. It learned something by itself and decided something by itself. And it is really AI if the following day the machine announces, I've now invented a new drink that I call Bespresso, and I think you would like it even better than espresso. So here, try it out. I made you a cup. The confusion about AI results in part from the term itself. The term AI has been invented decades ago as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it is inaccurate to think about AI as an artificial intelligence if by artificial we mean something that is entirely designed and controlled by humans. AI is not artificial in this sense. So it's better perhaps to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence. Alien not in the sense that it's coming from outer space, it doesn't. Alien in the sense that this is a non-human intelligence, it's not even an organic intelligence. It operates on completely different inorganic lines. It therefore is able to make decisions and to invent ideas that would never occur to human beings or to any other organic animal. A famous example of this was given already back in 2016 when the AI AlphaGo defeated the human Go champion Lee Sedol in Seoul. This game became justly famous, not just because AlphaGo defeated the human champion. It was the way AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol which shocked the world. Because AlphaGo, in order to win, invented new strategies for how to play the game that never occurred to any human player in thousands of years of the history of Go. Now, as long as AI invents new ways to play games or new kinds of coffee, it doesn't seem very important. But very soon, AI will invent new military strategies, new kinds of money, and even entire ideologies and religions. Consider money and finance more generally. If you recall the 2007-2008 financial crisis, you might remember that it was largely caused or started by something called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. CDOs were financial devices invented by a handful of mathematicians and investment wizards. These financial devices were so complex that they were almost unintelligible to most humans, including politicians and regulators. And this led to an oversight failure and a global catastrophe. Now, what happens if we now allow or even encourage AIs to invent new financial devices that will be orders of magnitude more complex than CDOs and that will be utterly unintelligible to any human being? Such devices could greatly improve financial efficiency and contribute to economic growth, and they could become the bedrock of the global financial system. But what would happen to human politics when no voter or politician is able to understand and regulate finance anymore? And what happens if after a few years of unprecedented boom, the financial system suddenly busts and there isn't a single human being on earth that is able to make sense of what is happening? Now consider the implications for something like religion. Especially, let's take as an example, religions based on texts like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. For thousands of years, Judaism granted ultimate authority not to human beings, but to texts like the Bible and the Talmud. Flesh and blood rabbis nevertheless had immense power within Jewish society for the simple reason that their holy texts could never speak for themselves. They were mute. Whenever you had a question about the text, you needed a human interpreter. Rabbis are humans who know their way around many Jewish texts, from the Bible to the latest commentaries on the Talmud. This is the source of their authority. Now, over the centuries, so many Jewish texts have been composed that not even the most learned rabbi is able to read all these texts in his or her lifetime, let alone remember everything written there. But of course, this is something that an AI can easily accomplish. AI could quickly read all the Jewish texts ever composed, remember every word in every single one of these texts and also find patterns in the texts that have so far escaped human notice, human attention, and AI could therefore use its unprecedented scriptural understanding and knowledge to produce completely new interpretations of the Holy Word. And this, of course, is true of Christianity and Islam as well. In effect, AI can start functioning as a holy text that talks back to the faithful without any need of a human mediation. What happens to a religion of texts when the texts start talking? Now, since Judaism invests, as I said, authority in the texts, a flesh and blood rabbi cannot just ignore the scriptural arguments of an AI. And human rabbis will very soon find it very difficult to compete with AI's mastery of the Jewish canon. Even if AI is not granted formal rabbinical status, it is likely that at least some humans, including even some rabbis, would turn to an AI rabbi for scriptural guidance and inspiration. The result might be surprising new developments in very old religions or the emergence of entirely new religions. Now, these kinds of developments have enormous positive potential. They can help humanity in countless ways, from inventing new medicines to preventing catastrophic climate change. But, of course, AI also poses many threats. So let's move on to the second question of what is the threat of AI. The basic problem with AI is not that it is evil. The problem is that it is alien and therefore unpredictable and untrustworthy. At the heart of the AI race, there is a paradox of trust. Humans find it difficult to trust one another, especially as the world is becoming a collection of hostile fortresses. But the people who develop AI somehow manage to believe that we could trust the AIs. When I meet the people who lead the AI revolution, I normally ask them two questions. First, I ask them, why are you moving so fast when there are such huge risks? And the response almost everybody gives is the same. They say, we agree. We know that there are big dangers, and it would be best to proceed with more care. However, if we slow down while our competitors in the other company or in the other countries won't slow down, they will win the AI race, and the world will be dominated by the most ruthless people. We cannot trust our human competitors, so we must move as fast as possible. Then I ask the second question. Do you think you could trust the super intelligent AIs that you're developing? And the same people who just told me they can't trust the human competitors suddenly assure me that they could trust the super intelligent AIs. And this is such a paradox, because we have thousands of years of experience with human beings. We have a broad understanding of human psychology and biology, of the human craving for power, of the tricks humans use to gain power, and also of the forces that keep the human pursuit of power in check. We have also made considerable progress in finding ways to build trust between humans. 100,000 years ago, people lived in tiny bands of just a few dozen individuals and couldn't trust anybody outside their band. Today, there are nations like Brazil with hundreds of millions of citizens, and there are even bigger networks of cooperation linking all 8 billion humans on the planet, Complete strangers often grow the food we eat and invent and develop the medicines that keep us healthy. Of course, we are far from completely solving the problem of human trust, and there are still many tensions and conflicts and wars in the world, but with humans, at least we understand the challenge we are facing. In contrast, we have almost no experience with super intelligent AIs. We have just created the very first prototypes. We already know that even primitive AIs can lie, manipulate, and adopt goals and strategies that were not foreseen by their human developers. We have no idea what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with millions of humans, and it is even more difficult to predict what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with one another, creating AI societies, AI tribes. What kind of goals will they develop? What kind of tricks might they invent? True, at present, it is humans who develop the AIs, so we can try to design them in a way that will make them safe for humanity. But remember that a machine is an AI only if it is capable of learning and changing by itself, making decisions by itself, and inventing new ideas by itself. So no matter how human designs them originally, the AIs can then change in a radical and unpredictable manner. And it's a huge gamble to simply trust that these super intelligent alien intelligences will always remain our obedient servants. The humans who despair of trusting other humans, yet think they can trust these alien intelligences, may be making a very, very big mistake. Now, I know that it's sometimes hard for people to understand how AIs might escape human control. Due to the influence of science fiction, when we talk about AIs escaping our control, people tend to imagine a scenario of killer robots running in the streets, shooting people. While something like this is actually already happening in some places like Ukraine and like Gaza, this is nevertheless the wrong image. If you want to understand how AIs can escape our control, don't think about killer robots. Think about business corporations. What are corporations? Corporations like Microsoft or SpaceX or Petrobras are non-human agents. Though they don't have a body or a mind, these corporations can open bank accounts, can hire people, fire people, lobby politicians, and do many, many other things. Now, previously, this corporate agency was just a legal fiction, a fantasy of lawyers. Why? Because in practice, every decision made by Microsoft or Petrobras was actually made by some human being, not by the corporation. Every decision was made by some human executive, human shareholder, human engineer. But with AI, corporate decisions will increasingly be made by a non-human intelligence, a non-human agent. Imagine a corporation that has no human executives and no human shareholders, only AI executives and shareholders. This corporation can make billions and reshape the world. A practical question already today in 2025 is, do we want as a society to allow such things? This is a practical question. Do we as a society allow AIs to open bank accounts, to manage corporations, to trade and invest, to hire people, to lobby politicians? So let us move to the last question. How can humanity flourish in the era of AI? To survive and flourish, we need to remember two lessons from history. First, power isn't happiness. We humans have been extremely good in acquiring power, but so far we have not been very successful in translating power into happiness. That's why today we are thousands of times more powerful than in the Stone Age, but humans are not thousands of times more happy. That's also why the most powerful people in the world, like Trump and Musk and Xi and Putin, are definitely not the happiest people in the world. Secondly, to survive and flourish, we should remember also that intelligence isn't wisdom. Humans are the most intelligent animals on the planet, and at the same time, we are also the most deluded animals on the planet. No other animal can believe the kind of nonsense that humans can believe. For example, my home region of the Middle East is burning in a horrendous war, fueled in part by the most ridiculous fantasies you can imagine. Humans there, on all sides of the conflict, seriously believe that the creator of the universe commanded them to fight and kill other humans. And they also seriously believe that the creator of the universe will reward them for their violence with everlasting joy and bliss in heaven. No chimpanzee will ever believe such nonsense. But many highly intelligent humans believe it. So power isn't happiness, and intelligence isn't wisdom. AI will be more powerful and more intelligent than us. But the power of AI doesn't mean it will bring happiness, and the intelligence of AI doesn't mean that AI will be free from delusions. In fact, a super intelligence might very well be super deluded. Therefore, the big challenge for business leaders and innovators is not how to create more powerful and more intelligent technology. Rather, the challenge is how to develop the wisdom necessary to use all this power and intelligence for good purposes. How to do it? The answer is quite simple. Build more trust between humans before developing super intelligent AIs. Do you know why planet Earth is nevertheless ruled by humans and not by chimpanzees? Not because we are more intelligent than the chimpanzees. Humans rule the world because we know better than any other animal how to build trust with strangers and cooperate in very, very large numbers. We have developed this ability for thousands of years. Unfortunately, just when we need human trust more than ever before, many of our most powerful leaders are busy destroying this trust. Instead of strengthening connections between all humans, they are busy building walls between humans. If humanity is divided, AI will escape our control and will enslave or even annihilate us. On the other hand, if humanity cooperates, we can together develop AI and other technologies in a safe and responsible way. Think about AI as humanity's common child. When we educate children, we know that children learn from what we do, not from what we say. If you tell your child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying, the child will also lie. Similarly, if you're a tech tycoon developing a super intelligent AI, and you're telling the AI, don't lie, and the AI then observes you lying, the AI will also lie. And if you tell the AI, be compassionate to people, but the AI observes you engaged in a ruthless pursuit of power, the AI will also grow up to pursue power ruthlessly without any compassion. This is why we must first solve the problem of human trust and only then develop super-intelligent AI. If AI is developed in a cooperative way by compassionate and trustworthy humans, then the AI too is much more likely to grow up to be cooperative, compassionate, and trustworthy. And all of you have a role to play in that. You are leaders and innovators. Amidst the growing political chaos in the world, the business leaders and the tech innovators still have very considerable power to shape the world. So use your power to build trust between humans. Use your power to build a world which isn't just a card game between ruthless warlords. Build a world in which the dignity of everybody still counts. Thank you.
I don't think it's possible to predict the future, but thinking about the future makes it possible to reflect on the meaning of what is happening right now, of the choices, the decisions we make right now, because many of these choices will have an effect for decades, maybe centuries to come. The present cannot be understood separately from the past, but neither can be understood separately from the future.
A lot of people hear AI, artificial intelligence, they think that intelligence is somehow connected to truth. So a super intelligent AI will have a kind of super access to truth. No, intelligence is not about truth. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems, to define goals and solve problems on the way to the goal. The truth is one of the things that can help you do that, but not the only one. And we have seen with human beings that human beings until today have been the most intelligent animals, entities on the planet, and at the same time we have also been the most delusional entities on the planet. We believe nonsensical things that no chimpanzee and no dog and no horse would ever believe. And a super intelligence is very likely to be super delusional, even more deluded than we are. So we would need a very strong ethical basis, a very strong basis of values, more than even before, because the challenges are bigger.